want to share an experience with the audience that is genuine, and I want to bring them into that as well.
Hi, Lucie. Good to see you again. How have you been?
Hi, Victoria. Great to see you too. I'm doing so well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about your album, which I have been really enjoying. And before we get started, I just want to mention that I have another guest who also released an album recently, and I'm asking the two of you the same set of questions, and you two are going through a very different musical journey in finding your identity. And I think this will be very interesting to see how the two of you have experienced a similar parallel journey, but in your very own way. So I'm going to be trying to stick to my questions as much as I can and not deviate too much. So we're going to talk about finding your musical identity or music identity. You have released Land of Eden recently. How would you describe the sound of this album?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think in describing the sound, I'll have to touch a bit on genre first, um, because this was a little problem for me actually, trying to actually distinguish or identify the genre of this album, because I mean, I'm a folk musician, but then I'm also bringing in a couple of jazz musicians into the album. So there's this really kind of nice fusion. And at
Yes.
one point, I was almost like, oh, I feel like I'm having a musician identity crisis. I don't know what I am. But no, I feel very confident in what the album is now. And I think, broadly speaking, it's a folk album. So it's very much rooted in the Scottish folk music. And I think that's clear from, I guess, the way I play and the sort of forms of the music, and maybe the chords as well. So there's a bit of that, but then also, as I said, these two jazz musicians have a drummer and an electric guitarist coming in. So there's a bit of a jazz element as there's some improvisation. So you kind of have this fusion sound, and then there's also a bit of an electronic element as well, because Dennis, the guitarist, he's really great at maneuvering guitar pedals, and so there's a lot of options there, and he's used that when recording. So to describe the sound of it, like, I think I would say it's quite modern sounding. It's a little hard to say why it's modern. I think because of the electronic sound and element to it. I would say it's quite clean, maybe.
It is.
um, like I would say the melodies are fairly clear, although the two guys, they'll listen to the melodies and have no idea like what's going on because there's so many notes. We like our fast tunes in Scottish folk music, so but I mean, I can listen to their music and have no idea what's going on. It's so complex, so yeah. Yeah,
And I,
so
I remember when you started your project, we'll dive into that later, that a lot of the pieces that end up in this album, um, I can remember the tune and the melody line of those tunes very clearly, and I can hear them in this album very clearly. But like you said, when you add the other elements in, it kind of give it a little bit of a different feel, but I don't think it was lost that the roots is in the folk music. So that really resonated with me as a listener of this album.
good, yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, I think overall it's more of a fusion sounding.
Yeah,
um,
almost contemporary folk, but I feel
yeah.
like it could be that. Yeah. So, what is the journey that leads you into ending up with this sound? And maybe let's talk about some of the inspirations and things that sort of started this whole project. And how did you end up adding in all these extra elements to create this end product? Tell us about that.
Well, I'd say the whole project is, or started out in my Hygge Tunes series. So I think when I last did an interview with you, I think was it at the beginning of the project, or
Yeah,
the end?
you were just
I can't remember.
starting. You were just
The start.
starting.
The start. So that was a year project for me, in which I released a tune every month. So I ended up with 12 pieces of music for harp. And after that finished, I went on to make a music book out of that. And then after that was done, I managed to get a little bit of funding, which kind of kick-started the whole album project. So I then took a few tunes from the Hygge Tunes series, and I went on to develop them. I really wanted to bring in at least a couple of musicians into this album. For me, I don't feel completely satisfied just playing solo harp. I feel the needs for me, I need some other musicians coming into my music to feel more creatively satisfied. It's just a personal thing. Um, so actually, my boyfriend is a drummer, and so he's a Danish musician. So he's the drummer on my album, and it made sense for us to work together. And because I'd never had a drummer before, or never worked with a drummer, and I was really curious to try that. So we have the drums and the harp, and I needed something else kind of to support me a little bit and support my role in the harp. And at the time started, well, I had a session with a guitarist called Dennis Iverson, and he actually played acoustic guitar in the session. But after that, when I decided I wanted to do the album, he was primarily an electric guitarist, and I've never worked with an electric guitarist, but I could imagine or could hear in my mind how the electric guitar would go very nicely with the harp. Even though I hadn't tried it, I just felt like it would work. And when we had our first session together, the three of us, so I brought some of my tunes into the practice room, and yeah, like that was it. We sort of nailed the sound. That was what I wanted to go for and develop. And yeah, it just felt that was the right thing to do. So we spent half a year kind of working on the tracks, and then took it to the studio last June, June 2022 in Denmark. And then yeah, it's been a year process, kind of planning and releasing. So yeah, that's it.
It is actually, I think it's the first time I've heard the harp and electric guitar. I've heard harp and acoustic guitar quite a bit and bass guitar quite a bit, but not an electric guitar. So I find that sound to be quite intriguing actually. And I really want to dive into that comment that you make about having other musicians to play with you. Has that always been the way you enjoy making music, to do it with other people?
I think so. As I've come to realize, I think for many years, or through my university, I just wasn't fully satisfied with what I was coming out with. And even though my mum would say, like, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, I was like, yes, but at the end of the day, all of us musicians are a little bit of a perfectionist in our ways. And I wasn't quite hitting it. But when I started working with these other musicians, I felt a lot more satisfied with the creative process and the output. And so it really just felt right for me to work with them. And yeah, you just gain so much from working with other musicians and you can play off one another. And I think it really just enriches the whole creative process. So I really love that.
Yeah, really enrich the sound too, because I have gone back to your videos of the harp only version of the tracks and then compare it to the album, and it's a very different listening experience. Both are really good, but very different.
Yeah.
What are some of your inspiration in the music for this album?
Yeah, I think I'll touch a bit on the theme here because I guess it ties into it. So the album is called Land of Eden, and for me, I wanted to create an album with purpose, I guess. So I didn't want to write music just for the sake of writing music for this particular album, and I think I'm more environmentally driven, and I would love to use my music as a kind of a way to educate and I guess get across some of my beliefs and values and passions and frustrations as well. So Land of Eden has really allowed me to do that. So I've tried to, pick some tunes from the Hygge Tunes series that were a little bit more environmentally focused in theme, and also write some new tunes that were geared more towards that theme. So I think for some of the tunes, I had certain ideas or themes in mind when writing the tunes. So for example, Fractured, which is the first tune in the album, it kind of describes a broken environment. So I think I had this idea in my head when I was writing it and arranging it. So Land of Eden basically it describes my belief or hope in a land or a world where mankind is like the environment, the relationship between man and the environment is restored. So that makes sense.
And how did you find taking an idea and translating it into sound? Has that been a difficult process for you, or do you find that come fairly naturally for you?
I think it comes. It does come naturally. But sometimes I maybe write a melody, and like I need a title for it, and maybe it stirs up some emotions connected to something. So I'll try and name it as such.
I find it very interesting because some people, the music will just come flooding to them, right, when they feel certain things. And for someone like me, like I tend to think of words first, not necessarily like sound first. So if you ask me to write a piece of music about a certain emotion, I probably will find that quite difficult. I would probably find it easier to just describe it or write it out in a text form, for example.
No, I totally get that. But maybe some emotions that are stirred up inside of me because of certain things, I feel like I can express through patterns of notes or chord progressions. So maybe that's how,
which is nice, because we need people like you, otherwise we will not have music. And that would not be good either. So that's why we have books and we have music, and that's wonderful. What are some of the values and beliefs that you have in guiding you through creating this album? What are some of the things that are very important for you as you create this collection of music?
Yeah, I think through everything I do, I strive to do it with integrity, and I want to share music that is of my true self. So I think so much of the music industry is show business, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so that's what I do. But at the same time, I want to share an experience with the audience that is genuine, and I want to bring them into that as well, rather than me just showing off something. I want to kind of journey together with the audience. So that is very important for me, that I share music that is honest and beliefs and certain themes that are true to myself as well. So I would say that that's kind of my main driving force, I think, or value.
And what kind of experience would you like your audience to walk out of after listening to your album or attending to one of your concerts in this album? How have people been reacting to the music?
I think positively. Um, I would love to, or I love transporting audiences to another world, and I can't say if I do exactly, but this is what I hope to achieve. Um, for me, when there's a real magic when you're in the practice room, you're rehearsing the stuff, and maybe you've just started working on a new tune, you have a sound for it, and you've kind of finalized the arrangement, and there's something very new and fresh and exciting, and I'll go and record that and listen to it like the day after, and it's kind of like being transported to another place, which I find really exciting. So I strive to um, do the same for my audiences. I would love to take them to a positive or happy place in through my music. Yeah, I don't so much want to challenge them, but yeah, I kind of go for more of a uplifting experience. So I hope my audiences feel that when they listen to my music.
I can tell you personally, that was how I felt when I was listening to your album. I was going through a couple of really tough week at work, very stressful, and I would find myself putting on your album, and there are tension in the music that I can relate to, and then there's also a very peaceful sort of resolution to it that I really enjoy. So it was a very interesting journey for me. Again, like I haven't having listened to just the harp only version and kind of know some of the backstory of the piece and see how you kind of end up taking some of them into this set of music and putting it in this particular order, which I was told a lot of times there's actually a lot of thought that has to go into planning which track go after another. And the listening experience has been quite wonderful. And there's a part of me that's hoping one day I'll be able to listen to this live, because I have a feeling that the experience will be even more exaggerated when I can listen to this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess that's another thing that you want your, or I would like my audience to want to listen to it again, so that it's not just a one-off. It is something that I love to do, is listen to music, and I'll find myself listening to some of the same tracks over and over. So I guess I want to kind of conjure the same experiences for people.
Yeah. And this is your first solo full-length album, right? What do you find most difficult in terms of finding that personal mark in an album?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I've found anything so difficult for this one, because it's been all like my own original music. So I guess it's very much got my personal stamp on it. Um, Maybe some difficulty, I wouldn't really call it difficulty, or maybe more a limitation, is in having the kind of greater vision for some of the tracks. So I feel this comes in the studio process. So I think I love being in the studio and working with a sound engineer, because they're like the extra member of the band, and they just bring so much magic to the music and the process, and they have a wealth of knowledge and experience that I don't have, and that's okay. I do my job, and I guess they do theirs wonderfully. So I guess I would love to have a even greater vision for some of the tracks in the kind of, in this album, the more electronic soundscape, so some of the electronic effects, and that might be some like tasteful reverb or delay or something. Yeah, but at the time I just can't really say, oh, I want that in my track, because yeah, they know more than I do. So yeah, so maybe I feel slightly limited in that, but yeah.
beauty of working with others, right? That, like you
Yes,
said, you do your job well and they do their job well, and together you can
absolutely.
create something that is bigger than just any one of
Yeah.
you on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a previous experience at university, I remember writing out music scores for some other people that were coming into my music, but I wrote their music out like note for note, which took way too long. But at the end of the day, it limited their kind of creative inputs. So for this album, I was like, I'm absolutely not going to do that. I'm going to let Dennis and Christopher do their thing. I'll kind of give them a guideline and we can work together on it. But it just allows for a much more kind of, yeah, I don't know, creative process.
Mm,
Um, yeah, which it was exciting to go through. Mhm.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And let's dial back to way back when you're just starting to learn music and starting to write your own music. Have you
Mhm.
ever tried to mimic other people's style or learn through observing other people's styles? And what are your thoughts on doing that in terms of sort of exploring your music identity?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a very good thing, although I'm I'm kind of bad in that I haven't done that so much. Or maybe I'm kind of realizing it now actually, and especially after lots of chats with Christopher the drummer, who's he thinks it's very valuable to learn from other people and to kind of bring their ideas in. And at the end of the day, like all music is kind of recycled and reused. There's only so many notes and chords and patterns that we're just finding different ways to use that and go about that. So yeah, I kind of wish I'd done a bit more of that. I wish I'd really studied more harpist music and try to embody a bit more of what they do, because I think you can really learn a lot from doing that. But at the same time, if you just focus on that, I think you're maybe not allowing yourself to fully develop your own or your own identity. So
Mhm.
for me, yeah, it's had pros and cons that I haven't necessarily imitated other people's work. At least I haven't done it intentionally.
Mhm.
um, yeah, so I've kind of had a blank canvas to really explore and develop my musician identity. But there's definitely a lot of value in doing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I don't think it's necessarily a requirement that we do one or the other to have your own sound. So it's interesting to hear your experience in this for sure. What
Mm.
are some of your favorite memories in creating this set of music other than working with people, which you have already talked
Mm.
about? Is there anything else that are that you're very fond of that you want to remember from this experience in creating the album?
Yeah, I think the time in the studio was amazing. We went for only 1 week and it was super intense. Or 1 week recording, rather. There was a few days mixing where that was the engineer just did his thing. But the actual time recording, like it was the most tiring and draining week of my life. But yeah, I remember just having such a buzz throughout the week. And um, yeah, it's just quite a special thing, like isolating yourself because you really don't see anybody else in that week. You are in such a creative bubble. You don't have any contact really with society. So it actually struck me when we came to the Friday and we finished in the studio and went back to the city, and actually being around people, I was like, okay, this feels a little strange because I'm just used to, you guys, and the sound engineer. But if everyone is kind of focused on the task and they're invested in it and the studio engineer is invested in it, then it's a really exciting process and kind of brings the music to a whole nother level. And as I said before, like I didn't necessarily have the complete vision. Like I had a vision, but everyone just added their thing and it kind of took the music to another level. So it was very special. Like, and I couldn't wait. I can't wait to get back to the studio.
Yeah, it's like the moment where everything come together and you can really see it without
Mhm.
any disturbance from the outside world per se, because you're just working in this tight space with each other on the music. That must be a really intense and wonderful experience.
Yeah, and you're really up against the clock as well, because I guess time is money in the studio.
That's true. Every minute counts, right?
Yeah, so there's not
Yeah.
so much room for error. I mean, yeah, you can have several takes on tracks, but at the end of the day, you have to kind of say, right, enough is enough. We have to go with this take because we can't spend all day on it. And are we really going to improve it anymore? So
Mhm.
it's really about accepting the imperfect, and that's been a big challenge for me.
And how does that compare to when you perform live? Because obviously you wouldn't have the opportunity to do multiple takes when you're in a concert. How is that experience different when you're performing live? Because you have been touring uh,
Yeah, yeah,
on the album, right?
yeah. I find there's less pressure when performing live, a lot less pressure, I think, because yes, you can make mistakes, and you most likely will make mistakes. Everyone does, but they probably chances are they won't be noticed really. Um, but in the studio, you want to get it 100% correct. You want every note to be on point. um, so yeah, for me, I feel like I can relax a little bit in when playing live. Um, but of course, I will still be probably too hard on myself and focus on all the things I didn't do perfect. But yeah, it's that's a process in itself. Yeah, learning to accept the imperfect.
Yeah. And you just said that you can't wait to get back to the studio again. So I'm hoping that means you're going to continue creating more music. Is this kind of the path that you want to go down again, mixing your harp with other instrument and sort of taking the folk and taking it into a modern kind of take? Is that how
Yeah,
you envision it's going to be?
yeah, for sure. I think it's always excited me with fusion music and just genres coming together. And like from a very young age, that was the music that really got me very interested. And I can see that kind of living or coming out of me today, or that desire to do that or go down that path. So yeah, so a few new projects that are kind of starting to tick away in my head. And actually the whole summer I was start trying planning my maybe another EP or something. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I can't wait to get back.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
when the last time we talked, you started the Hygge Tune project. And do you find that process to be helpful in feeding into how you are right now as a musician?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it definitely gave the whole album and kind of my recent musician life a good grounding, and it's just really nice to see how one thing leads to another, and shown me that you really have to invest a lot of time and patience and allow things to develop properly and kind of flourish. So yeah, I think it's really taught me just to go about it with small steps, I think, and you start to see more of a momentum as you go from one thing to another. So
Mhm.
yeah, the Hygge Tunes series was a very valuable project. Yeah, and it was nice that it felt like a really serious project because it lasted a year, and so I guess I feel a sense of achievement that I kind of saw it through from beginning to end.
hope you're going to start planting seeds for more exciting projects because, like I said, it's been so exciting to see how you started with that and then ended up with this album, which is very wonderful. I highly recommend everyone to go check it out. And I'm going to put some links to where we can find this album for folks to check out because, yeah, it has been a very incredible journey to see you grow as a musician. Just I think you just graduated not too long, if I remember correctly, when we chat. Yeah, so this has been an incredible journey for me to witness. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Oh, thank
with
you.
you.
No, it's wonderful to catch up.
Yeah. And so let's end with this question. So for those who are still finding their own music style and sound, what are some of the things that you would like them to remember? What are some of the lesson learned in your own journey that you would like others to know?
Yeah, really good question. I think to be aware of the kind of inner voices. What is the thing or things that really interest you about music? What makes you really listen? And it could be, genres or certain instruments or instrument constellations or something super niche. So I think to really be in tune with that. So for example, when I was a lot younger, I had a real interest in electronics, and not that I invested in that, but I really wanted to somehow use electronics with the harp, and I had no idea how to do that or how to access that world. But since coming to Denmark and getting connected with musicians that are doing that, like with, for example, Dennis on the electric guitar, and it just brings a whole nother element to the music. And now I'm kind of going into more pedals, more guitar pedals, and exploring more sounds that way. So I think, that like inner voice has always been with me, and I'm just now developing that and exploring that. So I think, and also fusion music as well. I always loved it, and it's something I've always wanted to explore more. And so that's now what I'm developing. So I think really try and explore the things that interest you, and also be very persistent and patient in that process, because it's taken me years and years to finally get to a place where I'm like, yes, this feels more like me now. This is my musical identity. So that's what I would say.
It's coming together really beautifully, and I'm glad that you're persistent and that you didn't give up, because when you do get to that place, it must be really satisfying. Like I can only imagine when you hear the album getting mixed and hearing the sound for the first time, how exciting that must be for you.
Yeah, it's so great. Yeah, and but honestly, like don't give up, because I've spent years of not being satisfied, but still believing that things will come, and they actually have. Yeah, so just time and patience. And
that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking about the Land of Eden with us, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It's been wonderful to chat.